welcome to the December 7th, 2022 Council of Governments meeting. If everyone could please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next on our agenda, we have, actually I'm going to just make a note, we do have board members online, so we will have to do roll call tonight. Okay. We'll move on to consent agenda. We have a number of consent agenda items. At this time, are there any board members that wish to pull an item off of consent?
Pull two.
Two? Okay. Number 2 is pulled. If there's no other from board, are there any staff members that wish to pull consent agenda item 2? Okay, seeing none, is there any public comment? Not seeing any in the room, any online? None? Okay.
I'll move this item, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second.
We already had a second, Justin.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to do a roll call vote.
Why?
Can you hear us, Justin?
I can.
Okay.
It's a little low, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably a couple seconds behind, that's why.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, a roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote, consent agenda, Amanda Follendorf,
Aye.
Gary Tofinelli,
Aye.
Justin Catalano,
Aye.
Tim Munides,
Aye.
Pat Bettinger.
Yeah.
Aye. Caroline Tirado.
Aye. Sorry. Okay, we had item number 2 pulled, so I'll turn it over to Caroline.
I wasn't here.
Okay. So if there's not any other public comment on item 2, is there any public comment? None? Okay. If there's no other comment on that, is there a motion to approve consent agenda item number 2?
So moved.
Moved by Tim, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. Roll call, please.
Roll call vote, consent item number 2, Amanda Follendorf,
Aye.
Gary Tofinelli,
Aye.
Justin Catalano,
Aye.
Tim Munides,
Aye.
Pat Bettinger. Aye. Caroline Tirado.
Abstain.
With that, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Next, we have a public comment. Is there any public comment on any items not on the agenda? So seeing none in the room, I'll go over to Zoom. Are there any Zoom public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to regular agenda item number 6, which is the Caltrans report. And I unfortunately did not see, is it Marlon? Yeah, hi Marlon, good evening.
Hi, Madam Chair, board members, members of the public, good afternoon, good evening. Just want to give a quick Caltrans update for the board tonight. And I want to start off by mentioning that Caltrans, we are launching our annual Move Over Highway Safety Campaign. And this is to remind motorists to move over, slow down, pay attention when driving in work zones. Tragically, the timing of this year's outreach effort coincides with the deaths of 2 Caltrans employees and 2 contractors in the last several months due to errant drivers. And the nature of this critical work Caltrans maintenance and construction teams perform in the fields can be incredibly dangerous, and the law that requires drivers to move over a lane or slow down when they see flashing amber lights from Caltrans equipment or emergency vehicles. In 2020, there were 96 fatalities related to work zone collisions in California. And of course, we always honor and remember the 191 members of our Caltrans family that have been killed in the line of duty since 1921. And our goal is that these public awareness efforts will create a safer experience for everyone working and traveling in work zones across the state. So if you're out and about, you will see our campaign across some of our changeable message signs, on the roadways. And you'll see our campaign on social media as well and on our website. We do have actually a YouTube video as well that we prepared to alert the traveling public about our Move Over campaign. So, and we did also have a press release on it. So that's why I just wanted to share that with the board tonight. I'm happy to provide additional information if you'd like, but that information is definitely on our website, and you guys will see it during the holiday season. I also just wanted to briefly mention there's so many funding opportunities being released right now, but I do want to just highlight a couple, and one of them being the Caltrans Reconnecting Communities and Highways to Boulevards. And this is a pilot program and funding which there is $149 million set aside for this community-based transportation planning. And it's really to support planning capital construction projects to restore community connectivity that helps to remove barriers in communities, whatever that may be. And we did hold a workshop in early December, but we're planning to offer our call for projects in January of 2023. We are accepting any questions and information. Our contact is crcp@dot.ca.gov. You can also, of course, contact myself regarding this information, or Gregoria Ponce. And this information is also on our website. I'm happy to share the information with the board. Also, just another plug for our Clean California Local Grant Program, Cycle 2 call for applications that also will be coming out in January and is also on our Caltrans website. I did mention the dump day events that are taking place in the county at last month's board meeting, so I assume you all have that information. But I also wanted to share our Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant application. Call for applications will also be in January. Once we have that particular information, we'll share that with the board, and we are planning to hold a workshop specifically for District 10 partners. So lastly, I did also want to mention as well our local traffic advisories. We are having traffic controls in place from Bonanza Mine Road to Appaloosa Road. This will be utility work, and it's starting tomorrow and will end on Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is on the right side of the road on State Route 4. And also we're doing traffic controls from the end passing lane to Central Hill Road. This is on the left side of the road on Route 4. This is also going to be happening on Friday during the daytime. So if you're out and about on State Route 4, please note those advisories. And we do have one more on State Route 49. Traffic controls we are also doing on 49 from Francis Street to Dogtown Road. On both sides of the roadway, this is utility work, and this will be happening on Saturday from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. So not a long window, but Saturday morning we will have traffic controls on Route 49. That's all I'd like to mention for the board tonight. If you guys have any questions, thoughts, I'm happy to take them. And thank you again for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any board questions? Pat, your mic's on, so I'm going to guess you do.
Yes, I have a question. Last month in your report, you said that there would be a dump day on January 21st, but there was no location yet. Do you have a location for that now?
There may be. Let me double check on that.
No, Marlon, the county has not set a date yet.
Okay, thank you.
We have a date, we don't have a location.
I'm sorry, a location.
We're looking at the Vets
Okay.
Hall. Right now, we're looking at, I talked to Frank about it, and Frank is open to having it there at the Jenny Lynn Veterans Memorial District grounds. So we are working on that with Jennifer.
I believe there are 2 dates that have yet to be decided for locations.
Correct.
and-
Copperopolis is the
Yeah,
other.
and Copper's the other location. Gary has a question.
I do. Thank you, Marlon, for your presentation, and thanks for the work on Highway 12 here by the passing lane coming into San Andreas. you're lucky that you have some area there that, because of the passing lane, that you can utilize, so it kind of keeps you guys safe, and they're parking on the pavement, which kind of protects them a little bit for the work they're doing there, so it's great. I do have a question, and I brought it up before, and there was another horrific accident on Highway 12 and Burson Road in Burson recently, and I'm being inundated by people that use that all the time and saying that something needs to be done with that intersection. The church is there, and people coming from the south to 12 really can't see oncoming traffic. So it's been a long-standing problem. So is there something we can do short of a stoplight, or should we ask to go to a stoplight there in order to prevent any more horrific accidents? And this one was actually one of the worst ones recently. There was another one where the car rolled over onto the church, and there was major injuries in that one also. So if we can do something at that intersection to help with it, maybe move this intersection, realign the intersection, because I think there's some space across the street's the fire department. There used to be the old railway right-of-way through there, and you might be able to move that intersection out a little bit so there's view, realign it, so you can see on the other side of the church coming there.
Okay, Supervisor, I am aware of the recent incident on State Route 12, but I would like our traffic operations team to take a look, as you've mentioned, at that intersection and see what opportunities that there are for improvements, whether it be some sort of signalization or reconfiguration of the intersection. I do agree that's something that we should take a look at, and we'll get back to you on that in particular. I'm going to take note on that and send that back to our operations team.
Yeah, there's a lot of people upset about it. And also the speed limit in Wallace, as you know, there's been several accidents there since that speed limit was increased, some of them major. So just putting it in your ear, because I'm getting it in my ear. And recently, because of that last accident, wasn't that long ago that we had the other one. So people were asking me what I can do about it. So I'm bringing it up.
Agree.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing it up. Appreciate it.
And I use that intersection and have for 33 years, so I just know to look before you get to the church. There's an opening, you can see oncoming traffic coming, but a lot of people don't know that, so thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Are there any other board questions, comments? Okay, is there any public comment? Are there any online? No, okay. Thank you, Marlene. As always, we appreciate you coming on and updating us on everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marla.
And next, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. This is the citizen member appointment process, and at this time, I'm going to move it over to the Executive Director, Adra.
Thank you, Chair Fallendorf. Staff recommends the council hear from the interested citizen member applicant. Staff further suggests consideration of the application and the appointment for a term that would be ending December 31st, 2024. I wanted to let the council know staff advertised the recruitment of 1 citizen member and 1 alternate citizen member, and there was a final filing date of November 18th. This was the only application that we have received. Staff will continue to recruit for the alternate member, and will update the council in February. But at this time, I'll hand it back to the chair to facilitate the interview from the citizen member applicant.
Okay, thank you. What I would like to do is actually give Justin an opportunity to speak. I know we all know, but I want to give you that platform before the board members start asking you any questions.
Thank you. I apologize for not being there in person tonight. As you know, I have a son, and things got a little busy today, and unfortunately I couldn't attend in person, but I'm happy that we have this opportunity to use the Zoom to continue to interact at this point in time. With that said, I am reapplying to be a citizen member. I've been a member of the council since 2015. I thoroughly enjoy being a part of this group and organization. During my time on the COG, there has been many projects that have been funded and completed, and I would love to continue to participate and give my opinions and vote on the agenda items that I agree with. And most of the time, the board, the staff does a wonderful job of presenting the agenda items, and my job is quite easy, I feel, because of the staff that we have, and it's been a pleasure to work with the other board members. During my time, I've seen many board supervisors from the county and the city come and go. Some of the individuals that I've worked with might have had differences of opinions on different items concerning the county, and I feel that I've always made my judgments in this transportation organization and also in the Calaveras Transit Organization to the best interest of the people of Calaveras County. And I will continue to do my best to represent the people of Calaveras County no matter what district I'm in, and no matter what district that our projects are taking place in. I will always do my best to support and look for alternative ways to come up with solutions on different items that we are discussing. And so again, I would like to be appointed again, as I thoroughly enjoy this organization, and I feel that I'm adequate with my knowledge and experience to support the council and the staff to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Justin. At this time, I'm going to bring it to the board, just a reminder that the electeds are the ones that vote, but I want to open it up to the other citizen members as well to ask Justin if there are any questions that you may have. Or not, I'm just want to make sure.
Not a question, but a comment.
Yep.
I've enjoyed serving with Justin, and I would hope that you would reappoint him.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any other comments from board members? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go to public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none on Zoom and none in the room, I'll bring it back to the electeds. So at this time is there a motion to approve the applicant? Yes. Am I doing it right?
A motion to appoint
Oh,
the
appoint.
applicant for the term ending December 31st, 2024.
I'll make the motion to approve Justin as the applicant, or the applicant Justin, for the term to December 31st, 2024.
Okay, we have a motion.
A second.
Second by Caroline. Since we're in person, Monica, can we vote? Can I do an aye and nay? Or do I need to do roll call for us? Just us three. I can do.
And then we can just note down the name.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 301.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
Okay. And next, we're going to be moving on to agenda item number 8.
Can you hear?
Yeah, but I hear feedback.
Brian, could you mute for a second? Nope, that didn't make a difference. Thank you. No. I can hear it.
If everyone could please hold for a second while we get the audio.
They weren't talking about you, Brian, when they were talking about being low.
I'm going to turn the mics off and turn them back on because I honestly don't know why that started doing that.
You want to wait?
But we can just turn them off, turn them on. Turn them off.
Oh.
As long as it doesn't have a mic, you usually have two over there, you have to share it. She does it for the TV. I have it tuned in for this side of it. That's the letter.
Yeah, I'll give it to her. It's mine off.
Okay, so we have agenda item number 8, which is a presentation by Richardson and Company with a request for acceptance by the council for fiscal year 21-22 Annual Transportation Development Act, financial audit for Calaveras County Council of Governments and Calaveras Transit Agency. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Director Rajo.
Thank you, Chair Fallendorf. Before I hand this over to Brian Nash, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Robert Merritt. He is our outside bookkeeper. He is currently on the Zoom, and he has been with the COG since 2017 and has been instrumental. Previous to him coming on board, we would have multiple findings of adjustments that had to be cleaned up. So I would just like to introduce him and let Rob say hi.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, my name is Robert Merritt. I'm a CPA here in California, and I've been working with the COG and transit here for the last 3 or 4 years, and just enjoyed my time, and I want to thank you for the opportunity the COG has given me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Now at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Brian Nash. He is with Richardson and Company, and he is going to present the COG and the Transit Agency's annual TDA fiscal audits. Brian?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to be presenting the financial statements of the Council of Governments and the Transit Agency, and along with those financial statements are 3 letters that we issue. One is the governance letter that's on your screen now. That's a letter of required disclosures to a governing body. The high point, my agenda will cover all the high points in this letter. There's also 2 letters that are called management letters, one for each entity, one for the Council of Governments and one for the Transit Agency, that have some recommendations that were the result of our audit. So my presentation is designed to present all of the required disclosures to a governing body under general accepted auditing standards. I have an agenda that I believe Melissa passed out that I'll be going through, just kind of an outline of all the information that's in all of these documents that are presented. I always start with our audit opinion. The opinion on each of the financial statements. You don't need to move the screen right here. I just wanted to mention that there's what's called clean opinions on the on the audited financial statements on both entities, both the Council of Governments and Transit Agency. So that means no modifications, nothing unusual. So that's a clean opinion to good opinion. If you do look carefully at our opinion compared to the prior year, you will notice that it's a different format due to a change in an audit standard. There was one new item that was implemented in both financial statements. There was a new Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement, number 87. That statement is related to leases. There was a building lease for the Council of Governments where we recorded a liability and an asset. And on the transit agency, on the transit agency, there's a transit center lease where we recorded a liability and an asset related to that lease. Okay, now I'll go over, start with the management letters. So these are the recommendations that came out of our audit. So this first one is the Council of Governments. The first recommendation that we had is to consider recording the fair value adjustment on the county pool. There was some changes in the interest rates, market interest rates, close to year end, which caused quite a large unrealized loss for the Council of Governments. It ended up being $71,000. So what that means is the fair value of the investment in the pool has an unrealized loss because some of the fixed rate investments in that pool are not worth as much as they were prior to the interest rate changes that occurred close to year end. So that doesn't really affect what you can draw from the pool. The pool is on an amortized cost basis, but for financial reporting, we had to record this unrealized loss on investments. So that was one recommendation, is just to consider that it was unusual to have such a large unrealized loss, and it was really because of the really large changes in the Federal Reserve, that the Federal Reserve Bank made in the discount rate that it has control over. So that was due to all the inflation that has been in the news. So it's really unusual, but it's something that should be monitored. That's one of my recommendations. And the second one was related to, excuse me, I have to take a drink of water. The second recommendation is related to the fund balance reserves. So close to the end of the audit, Melissa and I kind of spun our wheels a little bit trying to figure out what the fund balance reserve should be. One of them is related to the local transportation fund. There's a resolution that was passed in the past that says there should be a reserve of 10% of revenue, I believe is what it says. And we looked to see if there's a resolution approving the change, and we couldn't find one. So we ended up leaving the reserve for the local transportation fund the same as the prior year. But that just kind of brought to light that there probably should be a process to approve those reserves. So my recommendation is either during the budget process, approve the reserves of fund balance based on the original budget, or maybe in the June council meeting at the end of the year, once the numbers become clear, pass a resolution approving the reserves. There is a footnote in the financial statements that describes the reserves of fund balance. It's on page 14, there's a general fund reserve of $303,000, a $100,000 LTF fund reserve, and $132,000 RSTP reserve. So not letting you catch up here. It's page 14 of the financial statements. We would have gotten there eventually, but it's right there, right where your cursor is, unassigned funds, and there's the number. So we ended up leaving these the same as the past. And so the recommendation is just let's come up with a process to approve those. So it's very clear what those numbers should be at the end of the year. So something I discussed with Melissa. And so I think she's been thinking about what to do about that recommendation. So as far as the financial statements, if you like to go back to the top now that I went out of order here, You'll see that the beginning of the financial statements has our audit opinion. There's typically what's called management's discussion and analysis that follows the audit opinion. It's not there this year. It was removed last year, and we didn't re-add it. We kind of ran out of time. But it doesn't affect our opinion. I just wanted to mention that's a kind of an executive summary of the changes in the financial statements, the management's discussion and analysis. It's not there, but it does not affect our opinion. The statement of position here, this is a statement that shows full accrual accounting numbers. This statement includes not only what's in the general fund or the governmental funds, but it also includes full accrual numbers for long-term liabilities. You'll see under non-current liabilities, there's a current portion and non-current portion, and together there's about $150,000 of long-term liabilities that are recorded. So this statement is as similar to what a business, a private company business would report with all of its long-term assets and liabilities. Governments don't budget this way, but this is an additional report that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board believes we should report just to show what those numbers would be on a full accrual basis. You'll see that there's a pension liability. I always point out the pension liability there under non-current liabilities. It was down quite a bit this year. It was down 20%, and that was largely due to really strong earnings, investment earnings that CalPERS had during the year that was used to compute the pension liability, which was June 30, 2021. You'll see there at the bottom, there's net position. It has the restrictions and unrestricted net position. The restrictions are related to restricted cash, and there's what's called special revenue funds that I'll show you in a minute on the fund statements that include restricted money in them, so that the fund balance of those special revenue funds are considered to be restricted. And then there's unrestricted, there's $938,000 of unrestricted net position there. Now I'd like you to move on to the governmental funds. The governmental funds start on page 6, so we're going to skip the statement of assets there. So starting on page 6 here. So these are the governmental fund statements. You'll see the general fund on the left. That's the council's operating fund. This is the fund that's it's budgeted on a short-term inflows and outflows basis, so you don't budget for the change in the net pension liability or the lease liability or some of those other liabilities that are on the statement of net position. So this statement here shows that the general fund ended up the year, it had some restricted amounts for PTIMSA, unspent PTIMSA money, and then it also had unrestricted, unassigned fund balance of $799,000. And I always point out how much that is and what percentage it is of expenses, just to show how much that is, how much of the expenses would be funded by that fund balance. It's at 85% of expenses this year, which is pretty good. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends having 2 to 3 months, about 15% of expenses at a minimum in your unrestricted fund balance. So it's at 85%. And in the past, if you're a long-term board member, you may have remembered me pointing out that it was really low at one point. So it's kind of built up to the point where it's a little bit more comfortable level. Protects against being delays in collecting a grant, which happens frequently, or some unexpected expenses that occur. So that's kind of a good level to have there. So you'll see on the right of the general fund are what's called major funds. We have the Local Transportation Fund, State Transit Assistance Fund, and RSTP Fund, Regional Surface Transportation Program Fund, are considered major just based on the amount of assets, liabilities, and revenues and expenses that are included in those funds. And then you'll see a column that says non-major governmental funds. There's 3 smaller funds that are combined in that column. And there's a breakout in the back. The 3 funds that are in that are the State of Good Repair Fund, the LC Top Fund, and the Bike and Pedestrian Fund are combined as the non-major governmental funds. You'll see the fund balance of all of those funds are considered to be restricted for those specific requirements of each one of those programs. Let's see. If you'd like to go to the next page, the income statement, the next page after that, that's a reconciliation between the governmental fund and the government-wide statement. So this is the income statement of the governmental funds. It showed that the general fund ended up with about $55,000 of basically net income. It says net change in fund balance. So it ended on a positive note. The revenues were up about $22,000 and expenses were up about $105,000. Professional service expenses were up about $43,000, which is partially due to an expense we accrued just right at the end of the audit. There was a $33,000 expense we accrued, which was a generator that was purchased by the transit agency. So we accrued right at the end that $33,000 that kind of added to those expenses. Salaries and benefits were up about $59,000, and about $39,000 of that was the former executive officer's accrued vacation and management time off that was paid out when she left. So a large part of that $59,000 increase in salaries and benefits was that one transaction. And so you'll see that the other special revenue funds, except for the RSTP fund, ended up with positive income. RSTP, there were some allocations of previously collected monies during the year. So a lot of that those RSTP funds came to the general fund. Some of them were transfers out, you can see there, to the county and the city. So that's all I have on this statement. In the footnotes, I'd like you to scroll forward to page 17. I mentioned at the beginning that we implemented the statement related to leases. You'll see that there's a leased asset now. The office lease is now recorded. You record an asset and then an offsetting liability. You'll see that's a new item on the roll forward of capital assets. You see there $73,000. And if you go to the next page, I believe you'll see a long-term liability roll forward. You'll see the lease liability for the office. It was down to $49,000. So the assets, it's amortized straight line over the life of the lease, and the lease liability is being reduced due to principal payments. The stream of payments are discounted at an interest rate. It was 5%. And so there's a principal piece that reduces the liability and then an interest piece that gets recorded in income. So that's a new item this year. If you go forward, I just wanted to briefly mention there's a very long footnote related to, go on to the next page. There's a pension plan footnote that has all the information that shows how the liability is computed. And there's 4 or 5 pages of that if you'd like to scroll through that. And just as we're going through, I mentioned that there was a pretty good income from CalPERS. CalPERS had about 21.3% investment returns in fiscal 21. And they had a policy that they had already approved in the past that says when they have strong investment earnings, they're going to lower the discount rate used to discount the liability. So the discount rate is used to discount the pension liability. So when it goes down, the pension liability goes up. So they time that so these strong investment earnings would kind of offset the lowering of the discount rate from 7% to 6.8%. So just wanted to mention that they giveth and they taketh away. That decline in the interest rate will increase the liability, and they will, it will probably affect the contributions that they compute in the future slightly. I think they said it affected, there was an article that I read that said it decreased the funded ratio of the plan by 2%. So it wasn't a huge reduction, but it did decline, decrease that, it increased the liability slightly. If you'd like to scroll through to page 24, so all this information in the pension plan is there for a user to look to determine how it was computed. We have an other state grant footnote here. It shows the different grants that are coming through the council. The top one there is Potemsa money. There's over 200,000 left, and the second table there shows LC top money. It is about 252,000. So we show the changes in those balances every year. There's a requirement under the guidelines to show the activity in those programs in the financial statements. So that's why we show those. If you continue on to the next page, page 25, next page after this divider pages, this is the budget and actual page. So the top section is does not include carryover revenue, and the bottom section we've added the carryover revenue that's in the OWP to show that additional information. At the top, you'll see the revenues were over budget by about 15,000. You'll see the investment loss and other revenue is negative. That's because of that unrealized loss that we recorded on investments that I mentioned early on. The Calaveras Transit Agency revenue was not as much as budgeted as well, and I believe the answer for that, or the explanation for that, is he didn't have as much staff because of the turnover to work on transit agency activity, so the revenue didn't come in as high. You'll see on the expense side, let's see, on the expense side, the salaries and benefits, I mentioned there was a payout of the former executive officers, vacation and management time. That's the issue there, why it's higher than budget. Contracts, professional services contracts are down a little bit, a little bit over budget. Let's see, so the salaries and benefits, even though they had that payout, it was still a little bit less than budget due to that turnover. So overall expenses were $941,000 compared to $981,000 budget, so $39,000 under budget. And there at the bottom, you'll see it's the same revenue numbers, but then the additional column there is add the budget carryover. So there's $346,000 of unspent grants that were added as carryover to show what the revenues are on a budgetary basis. And when you add those, it's $361,000 higher than the budget. The next page is a table, page 26, a table on the pension liability. I'd just like to briefly show you some numbers there. If you could scroll down one page. So you'll see the last line of that top section, there's percentages. The 2022 column there shows 93.07. That's the funded percentage of the plan. So 93.07% funded, up from 89.3. And way in the past, it was as low as 78.4. So those investment earnings really helped increase the funded percentage during 22. So that's all I really have on the council. There are some additional pages in the back of the report that discuss there's a combining, if you want to just kind of scroll through, I'll just mention there's a combining page for the non-major funds that I mentioned. So those are the three smaller funds that are combined up front. If you go down a little farther, these are some required disclosures showing the Transportation Development Act, the LTF and STA allocations and what code section they are. This is used in the state controller's report that's filed by the council. Then there's a compliance report at the back, and I don't believe we have any compliance findings on this one. If you scroll through there. So we'll go on to the, so this is the management letter of the transit agency. And we only had one item, and this is a carryover item from last year. This was something we didn't see in our checklist of things that we're supposed to check on the TDA claim of the Calaveras Transit Agency. It's supposed to show that the expenses of the transit agency didn't increase more than the CPI changes. So this is just a recommendation to include that as part of the transit claim. It's been, this particular provision has been exempted due to COVID this year and in 2023, but it will come back at some point. So let's just get that into the claim format is the recommendation. And so if you'd like to go on to the financial statements of the transit agency, they should be just below there. So if you go to page 4, it's again unqualified opinion and modified opinion. So this is the basically the balance sheet, the statement of net position of the transit agency. You'll see that net position at the bottom restricted for transit operations is $1.3 million, $1,362,000, and the restricted for capital purchases is $221,000. That's a little bit more than the TDA really says that a claimant's supposed to have. The Transportation Development Act the legislative intent in that act is to claim and spend the money, pretty regularly. I know there was some discussion last year, if you remember the discussion we had in last year's board meeting about creating a capital reserve at the transit agency level. That's really not something that the Transportation Development Act allows, but you can claim up to 3 years worth of apportionments of LTF and keep the money in the LTF fund. So that's an option, something that you can do instead of claiming it and creating a large reserve at the transit agency level. So, considering that the transit agency and COG board are the same board, it's pretty easy to disperse it quickly if you need it. There's a code section that I provided to Melissa in the Transportation Development Act guidebook that shows how to go about having a capital reserve. I know that there's been some discussion about reserving money for a possible future transit center. So that's the way that it can be done. So really the amount that's been claimed for transit operations has exceeded what's been needed over time up through June 30, 2022 by that $1.3 million. So, that's a little bit more than the Transportation Development Act allows. Typically, we see transit agencies have, maybe 3 to 6 months at most of excess net position for operations. There is a compliance requirement that we have to look at every audit to make sure that the revenue claimed has not exceeded the expenses. So it's very common for transit agencies to have a budget that's a little higher than actual expenses, and so it might claim a little bit more than it needs. That's something that we're supposed to watch out for during the audit. And that's what happened this year. There was a little bit excess claim for transit operations during 22, and there was a little bit extra. I think there was $100,000 extra claim for capital that wasn't spent. So both of those are considered compliance issues under the Transportation Development Act, and you'll see at the back of the report there is a compliance finding for those. So what's the consequence of that? Basically, the consequence is the Calaveras Council of Governments gets to decide whether the claimant gives it back if it overclaimed, or keeps it and just uses it for future use. So you don't have to give it back. It's at the council's option. I can tell you CCOG down in the valley, they definitely don't require the transit operators to pay it back. They just make them keep it and consider it when they're claiming in the future. So if they have excess funds, they reduce the amount they claim in the future. So they don't claim the full amount of their budgeted expenses. They shave it down by claiming less than they need. So that's an option. So that's something that really should be considered when doing the next claim by the transit agency and Calaveras Council of Governments. So that I do have in my notes here that the amount of operating funds that's there in that position is 112% of operating expenses. So it's more than a year of operating expenses in fund balance. So if you go to the next page, the statement of changes in that position, you'll see the fares, $19,000. It was $10,000 in 21 due to the pandemic. It's up a little bit, but I believe that's still down over where it was 2 years ago. You'll see that the operating expenses increased from about 1.2 million to 1.3 million. You see the purchase transportation line was a big part of that. I know there was quite a bit more revenue miles according to your performance report in 22 compared to 21, so that explains that. And also the fuel. So fuel prices, as everyone knows, have gone up quite a bit, plus you drove more miles, so the fuel price was up quite a bit. I think those are kind of the biggest changes, the fuel and the purchase transportation. You'll see in the non-operating revenues, the non-operating revenues did decline quite a bit. You'll see that the LTF fund went down from 1.2 million to about 425,000. So I know there was a lot of delays in the federal revenue that was received, I believe, in 2021, but it was uncertain when that was going to occur. I think it was held up for a couple of years, and so that's really where that those operating funds resulted from that claim in 21 when we really weren't sure that those federal funds were going to come in. So, that's the reason really why that happened. The federal grants were $588,000 in 21, and I believe that was 2 years of funds. And then with the extra COVID money that came in, $474,000 in 2022, I believe that's a little bit higher than you used to receive on a yearly basis due to that COVID money. You see down below that section, there's a capital contribution section. There's the $100,000 of LTF that was claimed that wasn't spent. There was some POTEMSA money that was spent, and that was for the generator. There was about a $46,000, $44,000 generator that was purchased, and there was a deposit paid in the prior year, and this was the amount that was needed in excess of that deposit, so that was spent. So overall in that position, you'll see the change in that position was a positive $77,000. Okay. So let's go to page 10. I'm going to show you the new lease liability and leased assets. So this page shows the leased asset for the transit center. It's $151,329 there. So that's a new item due to implementing that new audit standard. And then if you go on to the next page, it'll show long-term liabilities, or that's it there at the bottom of the page, shows the lease liability for the transit center. It started out as the same number, but due to payments that were made, it's down to $79,000 at June 30, 22. So that's a new item due to the GASB statement number 87 being implemented. If you go to the next page, this is the future payments on the lease. $79,000 the principal payments, $83,000 overall, and left in 22. And at the bottom of that page is the state grant footnote. There's other state programs, and there's a footnote for each of the grant programs that you have. If you scroll down to the next page, you'll see there wasn't any potential left for LC top. At the end of the year, it shows what was spent during the year. The Calaveras, there was no activity in 22. It was just left because there's activity in the prior year. If you go down to the next page, this is the only unspent grant. State of good repair. Wasn't fully spent at the end of the year. And then the next footnote is the fair revenue ratio. So you'll see there are some big changes in the fair revenue ratio due to Assembly Bill 149 passed in July of 21. They said include the federal grant funds in the fair revenue ratio. So the fair revenue ratio, because of the COVID relief, is showing up as 47%. That's largely due to the federal funds. And these days you can include any kind of revenue that's not state revenue. So insurance proceeds are included. There's interest, there's advertising, the LC top fair subsidies allowed to be included. So all of those things result in a very good fair revenue ratio that's not normal. So it shows 47% fair revenue ratio, 64% in the prior year. So there's the back of the financial statements. If you scroll down, you will see the compliance report. One thing I put in, once you go back to that previous page, one thing I put in is how much is left on the transit contract. It's there under a commitment footnote. That's just how much is there on the paratransit contract. If you read that footnote, it will go through the numbers. Now, if you go to the compliance report, this is where I mentioned that there is a compliance finding showing up in this report. And if you go to the next page, there's a schedule of findings, and it just says what I mentioned: the $100,000 of LTF capital funds were claimed to not spend, and $57,000 of LTF claimed to not spend. I didn't put a finding in any of my transit clients last year because there was so much unpredictable federal money falling from the sky. But I'm back to reporting it just to highlight the fact that really we're not supposed to claim more than we have in expenses. So that's all I had on the financial statements. A couple of quick disclosures. What estimates are included in the financial statements? The fair value of the county investment pool is an estimate. The cost reimbursement receivables, those are allowed to be audited by the grantors, so that's considered to be an estimate. It could possibly be changed by the grantor. The lives used for depreciation are estimated. The compensated absences, vacation, sick leave liability, especially the current portion, is estimated. The lease liability discount rate that was used is an estimate, and the pension liability, which is based on an actuarial evaluation. And we didn't have any, the scope of audit was consistent with our engagement letter. We didn't have any difficulties dealing with management, no disagreements with management, no conditions on our retention, and no consultations with other auditors. So nothing unusual. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Brian. Do you have anything?
I would like to clarify
Yes.
some things if
I'm going to turn it over to
would like me
Raja.
to. I wrote down a couple of notes. So I just wanted to clarify on the reserve discussion on page number 14. What Brian is speaking to is the reserve that we hold within the LTF fund. There was no resolution that gave the definition of why, how we're putting the 10%. We bring the resolution identifying the amount, 10% of the estimate, and then we identify it within the fund. But there was no resolution outlining, what is going to be our methodology to set that funding aside. So I wanted to clarify that. The other item that Brian recommended is, we have the $303,000 in the operating reserve. There was a resolution at the time that we did that, but that was in 2010. So when Brian and I were working on this, I had to pull up resolutions from like 2008 when we created the RSTP reserves. So he recommended that every year we should bring forward a resolution identifying the reserves of these funds, so that it keeps it fresh, the board is aware of it, and we all know what is in the reserve. And I think, the council sees this when we do our mid-year financial and year-end. On those general ledger budget sheets, we always have it identified also. So, but I'll bring back resolutions. Brian thought that would be a good idea. They were old. It was hard to find the RSTP when we set it up because they were going back to 2007, 2008. Then they had some withdrawals and then some deposits. So, yeah. So I'll bring that back. The item on the $100,000. Okay. So the council approved this in February. So the previous admin services officer brought forward a staff report and clearly stated that she was going to fund the capital reserve with this claim. So after I started, I did the transfer. But as Brian has recommended, we will wait until we have capital expenditures. He recommends that we just leave it in there. We do anticipate having capital expenditures this year. So if we want to keep it there, keep track of the drawdown on the $100,000 and going forward, not claim capital in this manner.
Yes, and if you need a large capital reserve for a large project, the process in, I believe it's section, is it 4468 that I gave you, Melissa?
Yep.
Can be used where you can actually put in your claim that you're claiming capital revenue, but keeping it in the LTF fund at Calaveras Council of Governments, and then we show it as a capital reserve in the LTF fund. So basically, you can claim it, but CalCog keeps it.
Okay.
Instead of distributing it to the transit agency. So it's we get to the same point, but it's just the way that the TDA says to do it.
Okay. And then the other item, I didn't know if they wanted clarification on the RSTP funds that he was talking about was paid out of the operating. Those allocations to the city and county were on CIP projects, just like the one that was on consent tonight for the Valley Springs project or the Angels Creek, whenever they ask for allocations for their CIP projects. The other one that Brian mentioned was the FTA funding. I think the council remembers in the past we've had to do a loan and we've had to do a line of credit because it takes so long to be reimbursed for those FTA funds. When I came on board, no invoicing on the FTA funds had been done. So as we're reconciling and closing, we were able to get those invoices out. But as Brian mentioned, it was, late, and then, and then the revenue isn't recognized in that. Yep. Okay, and then the item on page 69, over budget on the professional services line item. Brian and I also talked about this, bringing back something to the council. The county does this. If you are within budget of your category and not your line item per se, it's allowed. So Brian and I were talking about bringing an item and asking the council how they would prefer that policy to be done. So I'll bring that back in the future. I don't have any other items unless you have some questions for Brian or I.
So I'm going to open it up to the board. Are there any questions on it from the board members?
I just have one question on the LTF. Since we didn't spend the amount, we had more amount than what we spent for the CTA. Is this going to affect any allocations of LTF funding to us from the state going forward until that money's spent?
No, but what I've told Brian is we're currently looking for a transit facility.
We are.
So I think we have a window of time. If this isn't, we're not habitual. It's not like we've been hoarding this money, for 5 years.
Okay.
I think the council still has time to look at these transit facility options. He's noted what's in there. We acknowledge it, and we can deal with it going forward.
I just want to make sure we don't have any effects from this, from the state.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That money comes automatically to the council, so it doesn't stop due to this issue.
Thank you, Brian.
Are there any other board questions? I'm not seeing anybody's hand raised online, so I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none in the room, are there any online? Seeing none online, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion to approve and accept the audit. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you,
We
Brian.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
His team and Brian worked very late nights in order for us to get this. You want to turn in your audits in December. They're due at the end of December. So I really appreciate all your work, Brian, and your team. Thank you.
Yeah, well, everyone worked hard. We're all working together. Rob, there, the bookkeeper, and Melissa, they're all helping out with all of our questions late at night, and all working very hard together. I think we're all a good team.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Excuse myself now.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Justin. We do need to do a roll call because Justin, you're online, so
Back.
Roll call vote, item number 8, Amanda Follendorf,
aye.
Gary Tofinelli,
Aye.
Justin Catalano,
Aye.
Tim Udipies,
Aye.
Pat Bettinger,
Aye.
Caroline Shirado.
Aye.
Next, we're going to move on to item number 9, and at this time, I'm going to move the item over to Supervisor, Board Member Tofinelli, and I will be recusing myself.
Are you going to be a member of the public?
No, she's actually leaving.
We'll move on to item number 9. This is a minute order approving programming of fiscal year 2023-24 through 2026-27, call for projects for regional surface transportation and congestion mitigation air quality, or CMAQ. Melissa, your name is on this. Do you have any?
Thank you, Mr. Tofinelli. This is our 2022 call for projects. Approximately every 4 years, the COG conducts a call for projects. We then recommend programming of state and federal funds over multiple years. The council approved the 2022 call for project guidelines at their September 7th meeting. The deadline for project applications was October 12th. And between the city and county, we received 14 project applications. Through our technical advisory committee, we worked with Steve Vandenberg with Cathedral Oaks, who facilitated the process. And on page 105 of the packet, you can see that we ranked all the projects. The top 2 projects that are listed in red are the projects that are going to be recommended for funding tonight. Both projects were the #1 priority of the city and county. Both of these projects are receiving the funding that they requested. They are this funding is for construction. The recommendation is supported by the Technical Advisory Committee, and I'd just like to highlight that these are previous investments of the COG in the previous call, and it's really exciting to see these projects continue through the delivery process. If you want to turn to page 108, this is the funding broken out by fiscal year. And if the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Justin?
I have one question on page 104 packet, actually page 105. I'm noticing on number 8, the Railroad Flat Road Guardrail Project, there's a Railroad Flat Road in Angels Camp?
No, both 8 and 9, those are typos. Those are both
Okay.
county applications. There was
Okay.
only 2 city applications, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, Wagon Trail realignment is not in the city.
Okay. Then I don't have any further questions.
Any other questions? I do have one question, and I don't want to seem rude, but the CMAQ money being put for Angels Creek Bike and Pedestrian Park, did they not return funds, CMAQ, and we loaned money out for that project?
Yes.
To Sacramento?
Yes,
Are
we
we
did.
getting that money back going forward for this project?
Yes.
So that's included in what the costs that you've shown?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think our strategy or methodology has been, it's a lot to run a federal project. So when you can focus the federal funding on a project that's already, hit all those hurdles, and we split up CMAQ for the county project, and we just kind of changed the color of money. Like RSTP is very clean funding for the Valley Springs project. So-
Apparently, we changed it to red because that's the...
So.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that we're getting that funding back, and that's shown in this, because there was like 200 and something thousand, was it not?
No, so they loaned out their 415,
whatever.
so that's not included in these totals, because that's from the previous call that they
Okay.
couldn't spend. But I think what you're talking about is the de-obligated,
Yes.
like the 136. After they did reconciliation, it's 109, and it is identified in here,
Okay.
and we do have it going back on that
All right.
project.
I just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay.
Okay, that's my question. Is there any other questions? Is there any public comments or questions? Are there any online? No? Well, I'll bring it back to the board. I'm open for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. Okay, Jason and Tim, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes on a 5-1-1 vote.
Thank you very much. I'm
You're
really
welcome.
excited that this call is.
And we can...
Thank you. We're very excited at the city as well.
What did he say?
I said we can bring him
I said the city is very excited as well. Thank you.
Oh, do you hear my?
Oh, I'm sorry, we had to do a roll call, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have a motion
Gary.
and a second, let's do it. Can we do a roll call? I forgot.
Roll call vote, item number 9, Gary Tofinelli,
Aye.
Justin Catalano,
Aye.
Tim Munides,
Aye.
Pat Bettinger,
Aye.
Caroline Tirado.
Aye.
Normally, when I do this, if there's somebody online, I'll call for a vote, and if I don't hear a no, then it's okay, but if I hear a no, we'll do a roll call vote on it, but that's fine. We were doing roll call all night, so. All right, Tim, you want to ask Amanda back into the room?
Absolutely. She's in here, in the hallway or up front?
That'll be fun while it lasted. Now he's locked out. Unless you brought his off.
We're good? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 10. And I'll turn it over to Monica, but first let me read it out. This is the COG Legal Counsel Brown Act Meeting Participation Update, and it's just a verbal report.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Monica Streeter, and I'm counsel for the COG, and I'm going to be providing an update this evening on updates to the Brown Act regarding virtual participation. So we are now 3 years into the pandemic, over a year into the usage of Assembly Bill 361, and public agencies and members of the public have become very comfortable using virtual meeting participation. So much so that public agencies lobbied the state legislature to extend the provisions of Assembly Bill 361 beyond their proposed sunset date of January 1st of 2024. However, the legislature responded with a new Assembly Bill 2449. So AB 2449 becomes effective January of 2023, and it does relax some of the teleconferencing requirements of the Brown Act, but only in certain situations. So the traditional provisions for teleconferencing under the Brown Act are still available. Those have not been amended or modified. And AB 361 is also still available, provided there is a declared state of emergency. As we know, the governor has announced that the COVID-19 state of emergency is set to expire on February 28th of 2023. So unless there is an extension of that state of emergency or the declaration of a new state of emergency, either at the state or local level, the provisions of AB 361 are likely inapplicable beyond that February 28th date, meaning then we would have the provisions of AB 2449 for virtual participation. So what does AB 2449 do? Well, one, it becomes effective January 1st of 2023, and it gives individual members of the body, so individual members of the COG, City Council, Board of Supervisors, whatever it may be, the ability to participate in meetings via teleconference for an emergency or for a reason that they call supported by just cause, and I'll explain what just cause in an emergency circumstance is in just a minute. In order to use these provisions, the body still has to have a quorum physically present in one single location that is open to the public and identified on the agenda. So this is much more stringent than AB 361. So for our purposes, it means that we would have to have a quorum of the body here present in this room in order for any other member to use the provisions of AB 2449. When using the teleconferencing, the body has to provide, I'm sorry, is there? Should I pause for a moment?
If you want me to let you finish, but that's fine. I'll wait.
Are you sure? I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, the only question I had is, so previously, if you didn't attend and you wanted to attend via Zoom or whatever, you had to give the location prior to the meeting where you're at, so the public would know where you're at as a member. That's being dropped, is what you're saying?
So those are the traditional provisions of the Brown Act, and those are still available. So if AB 361 is not available or 2449 is not available and you need to participate via teleconference, then yes, that is the way to do it. The teleconference location has to be identified on the agenda. An agenda has to be posted at the teleconference location. The teleconference location has to be open and accessible to the public. And if a member of the public does show up, they have to have the ability to address the body. So yes, those are the stringent traditional rules of the Brown Act that we had to utilize before Assembly Bill 361. So those are still in effect. For AB 2449, what it provides is, again, you have to first establish your quorum physically present in the one single location, and you have to provide a two-way means for members of the public to interact with the board. So that means they have to be able to hear and see both ways. So Zoom, for example, is a perfect example, or a combination of a webcast and a call-in number where the members of the public can communicate with the body and ask their public comments in real time. We can't require them to submit anything in advance in writing, but they have to be able to ask as the agenda items come up. So once we've established all of those things, then the member of the legislative body that needs to participate remotely can do so for either just cause or an emergency circumstance, okay? Now, just cause is a child care, it's 4 different items. A child care or caregiving need of a child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner that requires the member to participate remotely. So basically some sort of caregiving need for your family. A contagious illness that prevents you from coming in person. A need related to a physical or mental disability. and then travel while on official business of the legislative body or another state or local agency. So for example, if you were at League of Cities or, something like that, that would be just cause to participate remotely in this COG meeting. A member can participate using Just Cause 2 times in a calendar year. So that's allowable up to 2 times in a calendar year, okay? Emergency circumstances is a physical or family medical emergency that prevents a person from attending in person. So you can see that there is some overlap, and it could create some potential confusion between what's just cause and what's an emergency circumstance, because they both relate to a potential caregiving opportunity. So it may be difficult to determine which one to use. For the emergency circumstances, it cannot be used for more than 3 consecutive months or 20% of the regular meetings within a calendar year. So for this body, we have 10 meetings a year because we're dark in January and we're dark in July. So that would be 2 meetings a year. The statute also provides or more than 2 meetings if the legislative body meets fewer than 10 times per calendar year. So it's basically that 2 number is what we can rely on. Now, in addition to having to meet those requirements, if you're going to participate remotely, you now have to do so through both audio and visual, so you don't get to hide without your camera on. You have to now turn your camera on. And I'm not meaning this board, I'm just saying in general. Both audio and visual technology has to be used so the public can see you. And you have to publicly disclose whether there's somebody over the age of 18 in the room with you and what your relationship is to that person, generally. So for... Yeah.
How many of you are over 18?
You have a lot of friends to identify. So generally, a child might be visiting from home from school or something like that. That would just need to be disclosed. So we have all of those items. So just cause, you have to have one of those 4 items. You have to request it in advance. It does not require permission from the body. If you want to utilize the emergency circumstances situation, you have to make the request and the body has to approve it. So if you know that you're going to need to use emergency circumstances before the agenda is posted, that item will be placed on the agenda. If the situation arises after the agenda is posted, AB 2449 has added a provision to the Brown Act to allow the legislative body to consider that item. What pre-COVID, we used to consider the emergency situation, something that came to the attention of the legislative body after the agenda was posted, which requires immediate attention. So this now is specifically identified as something that qualifies so that the board can take consideration of that item and approve the request for the member to participate under the emergency circumstances option. So, that's basically 2449. Again, AB 361 is still in effect. We do have to have a declared state of emergency. That's kind of the prerequisite to utilize AB 361. So again, that likely will be unavailable after the end of February unless there's a new state of emergency or the COVID state of emergency is extended. And then the traditional provisions of the Brown Act, agenda posted, all the locations, identified, accessible to the public, those things will still be available as well. So right now it's a little bit confusing. It's much more administratively burdensome than Assembly Bill 361, but it does provide an option, at least for some meetings throughout the year, for members to avail if they can't attend in person. So with that concludes my update on the Brown Act, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Caroline?
I do. So if you're traveling for work, your job, then that's not one of the things that falls under this new AB 49.
Correct. The statute does not define work travel. It's specifically limited to while on official business of the legislative body. So, or another state or local agency. So if you happen to work for a state or local agency,
I do work for another,
then that
federal
could
agency,
potentially
so,
qualify
okay.
under that provision, yes.
Monica, who makes the determination under whether they qualify, the excuses?
For just cause, it has to fit into one of those 4 bubbles, and if there's a question, it would likely be Melissa and I who would work with the board member to make that determination. The emergency circumstance is determined, the board has to approve it. So it would be up to the members here.
So we could probably put it on the beginning of the agenda if a board member requested it, so then that way we can say yes or no, you can stay, so they can participate, right, Monica?
Correct. Similarly to the way we have the Assembly Bill 361 item at the top of the agenda, you may see this now listed there.
Okay, Justin, you had a question?
I do. So, for example, tonight I had an issue with my son. Hypothetically, this would, right now, obviously, this is okay, but after February, if this situation arose, I wouldn't necessarily, this would be one of my 2 meetings that I'm allowed to do that with?
Under the just cause provision, that is correct.
Okay. Now, what happens if a member exceeds the usage? What happens?
The statute doesn't say, but likely it's a violation of the Brown Act, which comes back on the agency, which means that the agency, the COG, would have violated the Brown Act in holding that particular meeting, and we may be in a situation where we would have to recertify or validate all of the actions that were taken at the meeting that were potentially in violation. But the statute does not specifically, AB 2449 itself does not specifically identify a penalty.
All right.
Okay. Hold on. Justin, was that all you had?
Yes, she answered the question.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, Gary?
So I go back to my other question. Previously, before all this COVID, you're saying those are the only restrictions, even though if I put on the agenda, I'm going to be at so-and-so, at this address, it's open to the public. There were no restrictions on that before. You could do that as many times as you wanted to, as long as you put it on the agenda and you said that you're going to be here and it's open to the public. You're saying that's no longer going to be a valid situation?
No, and I didn't mean to imply otherwise. Now there
Okay.
are essentially 3 options, right? There's the traditional rules under the Brown Act, which is what you just outlined. The second option is Assembly Bill 361, provided there's a declared state of emergency. And then the third option are these new provisions of Assembly Bill 2449. So the traditional rules that you're outlining, you put it on the agenda, it's open to the public, all of those things, those will always be available because we are doing everything we can to make it accessible to the public, allowing them to participate, giving them the notice, all of those things that are
All right. I wanted to
required.
Thank you for clarifying that. So Justin, if that happens again and you know a couple of days ahead of time, you can get it on the agenda and just say your address, you're going to be there and that's where you're going to be at. It won't count against you on the other parts of it.
But I will just add on to that, though, if somebody does knock on your door and says, hey, I'm here to participate in the COG meeting, even though it is your residence, you are required to open the door and let them in. Yeah.
That's highly unlikely, but yeah.
I've heard of one situation where that has actually happened.
Well, I was in Hawaii one time and did it from Hawaii and told them I was at this hotel and room whatever. No one showed up.
Yeah, no, we've done it from DC and all kinds of places.
Thank you for clarifying that, Monica.
Yes, my pleasure. Are there any other questions?
Any other question from board? Justin, are you okay? Okay, I have more of a comment than question. This board's been pretty good about participating and being conscientious, but I just want to remind all of us, because last month I was out sick, if you're sick and you're really not feeling good, please take advantage of your alternate and just not show up at all. Allow them that opportunity to participate and be part of the COG board so they can continue to understand and what's going on. I know that's not always the same with the public members. We only have, well, right now we don't have one, but when we do, we only have one of those available. But I do want to try and keep this board as cohesive as possible. But I know we're going to have a new chairman next year, but it is a lot of work for staff to be logistic, trying to figure out who's actually going to be here, what's going on. So if you do know, please at least give the team a heads up so they know who to expect that's going to show up in the room or not. Or please be responsible in contacting your alternate. I think we've been pretty good about it, except for last month. I failed to do that because I was really trying to push it, but let's just be proactive on it. So,
I will say this, he may declare an emergency sometime near the end of January if things continue the way they are, because the numbers keep going up, and there's a lot of things going on. It's winter time, and just here at the county, our numbers last month were up, and they're already up this month for COVID. So there could be, depending on how it goes and people not getting vaccinated or their booster shots or whatever, there could be still continued maybe till March or April because of the numbers, so.
yes, correct. And if you are isolating at home, I mean, obviously that's extreme. You still feel good, but you're in isolation. Please go through that. Don't expose all of us to Gary's point. But I just want to make a note, like, if you really are sick, let's try and keep with the cohesiveness and working with staff to make it consistent with everyone.
Correct.
But yeah, Gary's right. Who knows what we've had our own up and down the last couple months at the county as well. So, is there anything else you want to add, Monica?
No, that concludes my presentation unless anyone has any other questions.
Okay, I do need to open it for public comment on the item. Is there any public comment? Is there anyone online? No? Okay, cool. Okay, this was just an informational item, so no action needed. We'll move on to item number 11, which is county and city reports. So first we have the City of Angels, and then second we have the county. So I'll start off, is anyone from the city here? Nope. Okay.
I'm online. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, where are you at?
Is that Rebecca?
Yeah, it's Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hello. Just wanted to give you an update on the Angels Creek Trail. We are working on the environmental report, and then we will be circulating that, and then once that is done, then we'll start doing right-of-way discussions. And so our timeline works out really well. So we'll be able to get the funds back for CMAQ that we had borrowed, and that will align going forward with what the COG board just passed. So we're moving ahead, and we're really excited for that project.
Thank you, Rebecca. Are there any board questions? Seeing none, I don't see Justin's hand up. We'll move on to the county.
Robert Bale left you.
Wanted me to apologize, but he had to leave. He had another engagement. I'll keep it very brief. Thank you so much for approving the other project. We're very excited about Valley Springs and getting that finally constructed. There was one item that Robert wanted me to specifically key in on, which is the wagon trail. He wanted me to extend an invitation to all of you to go visit the newly paved section before it opens. He said, please call him anytime and he'll make those arrangements to have you visit the site. So please take advantage. And unless you have any questions, that's all I've got right now.
Okay, any question from the board?
Yeah, we do have a big winter storm coming in this weekend, so hopefully we're winterized out there now and
Yes.
ready to, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
they're right on top of it.
thank you.
It's in great shape.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
any other comment? Thank you, Kelly. Okay, seeing none, any public comment? Not seeing any. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the council report. So I will start with Tim.
I want to thank the county, and I want to thank CCWD for their efforts. Our laser light show was a huge success again this year, so that pretty much ends it.
Thank you. Pat? Anything?
Well, we did have our Valley Springs Parade, December 3rd, Saturday morning, in spite of the rain, and it went off very well. We had over 40 units in the parade.
Oh, wow.
A lot of enthusiasm and a lot of audience participation.
Nice. Gary, I believe you were there. I saw some photos of that.
It was a great parade. Again, we had over 40, and the rain more or less held off until afterwards. We did get a little bit of a sprinkle, but for the most part, it held off, and immediately started after the parade, and it was raining, but it was fine. The craft fair that we had this year, we didn't have it last year, we had this year, was a tremendous success. So, yeah, it was great, and next year. I can't wait.
Caroline?
The city, we had our strategic planning meeting last Thursday, and it was an all-day meeting. It was very productive, and we will be having a whole bunch of outreach coming out from that meeting, just regarding our vision and mission and priorities and things, so it was great. And then I attended the Murphy's open house last Friday. It was really well attended, and parade was great. And then I just saw that our parade for Saturday, this Saturday, has been postponed in Angels Camp to the 17th. So if you were planning on going, just move it to the next Saturday.
Big storm.
Big storm, yeah.
Justin?
I just want to say thank you again to everyone for keeping me on the board. I'm excited to continue to be a part of this council, and will do my best to provide the best options we can for the county in our transportation and transit organizations.
Thank you. A couple of things at the county. We'll be celebrating next week one of our board members as she retires. So if you want to attend, we're kind of celebrating the last of her meeting. So please come if you want to support that. It's bittersweet, I guess. Yeah, do you want to say something?
Her name's Marita.
And then the county's been busy. We adopted a governance manual. We adopted a strategic plan. We adopted a new ordinance, now creating from a CAO system to a CEO system for the county. And I feel like there was one other thing. We reduced did the first bite of our structural deficit down to about $4.97 million from $9 million. So county's been pretty busy, and that's just phase one. So Gary gets to handle phase two next year. And then next month, I will be attending the Caltrans District 10 bike and pedestrian meeting with other members of that group. And for those of you that aren't aware of that, Caltrans put a bike and pedestrian collaborative group together. And I will be going as Calaveras County, and it's to talk about what projects are coming down, how we can support those type of recreational use, and ensure that our region and District 10 is being able to be represented and get those funding down to this level. So I think it's the first meeting in about 4 months. I think they meet about quarterly. So I just got on it, so it'll be my first official meeting attending that. Other than that, we will adjourn the COG. Our next COG meeting is February 1st, 2023 at 5:30 here at Government Center, and now we'll move over to the CTA. And we're going to take a short break. So can we take about, what do we need, 5 minutes? 5 minutes, Susan? Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute recess for those of you online.
I have nothing to add. I have nothing to add to the report that I included, unless you guys have any questions or comments.
Does anybody have questions for Erin's report? No. I tried, Erin, I really did.
I can manage that.
Thank you. I'm just really excited to have the audit and the call for projects completed. So in February, we can start fresh and start looking at our current projects, but I did want to let the council know 2 projects that will be added to our next fiscal year overall work program will be our EV charging plan with the city, county, and transit. And then I don't know if you noticed in the call for projects, I had a black line, and then there were 4 projects under there. I just wanted to let the council know that those were concentrated on bike and pedestrian and trails. So I thought the COG would do an update to our bike and ped plan and do a regional bike, pedestrian, and trails plan. And so I'll start that process in our overall work program for next fiscal year.
Very good.
Thank you.
Does that sound
I
good?
didn't notice that.
Any questions for staff? Nope. Okay, now we can adjourn the COG, and we will take a 5-minute recess, and then we will go into CTA.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you.
You do it.
Good evening, and welcome to December 7th, 2022 CTA meeting. At this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the consent. Are there any board members that wishes to pull an item from consent? Caroline?
Can we pull item number 2, please?
Okay. Number 2, are there any other items that are wished to be pulled? Nope, and I'm not seeing Justin. Okay, is there any public comment? Seeing none in the room and none on Zoom, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda item 1 and 3?
So moved.
Moved by Tim, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait, sorry, we gotta do roll call. I'm sorry. Roll call. You guys got me going.
Okay, let's do it.
Roll call consent item numbers 1 and 3. Amanda Follendorf.
Aye.
Gary Tofinelli.
Aye.
Justin Catalano.
Aye.
Tim Munides.
Aye.
Pat Bettinger.
Aye.
Caroline Schrader.
Aye.
Next, we have item number 2. Any comment on it, Caroline?
I wasn't present.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion, is there any public comment on number 2? None on it, okay, there's none in the room. So we'll move it over to, is there a motion to approve?
Motion or second?
I'll second. Let him have the motion.
Justin moved, Tim second. Roll call.
All consent item number 2, Amanda Follendorf.
Aye.
Gary Tofinelli.
Aye.
Justin Catalano.
Aye.
Tim Munides.
Aye.
Pat Bettinger.
Aye.
Caroline Schrader.
Abstain.
Next, we'll move on to the regular agenda. We have item number 4, which is public comment. Is there any public comment for any item not on the agenda? Seeing none in the room, we'll move to June. None on June. We'll move on to the next regular agenda item, which is number 5, paratransit services operators report. At this time, she is out of the area on an emergency. So we're going to move to item number 6, and we'll get a report out at the next meeting. Next is transit CIP quarterly report. Erin?
The quarterly report was included in your packet. You'll see the vehicle replacement one. The 50% not accounted for is the 2 vehicles we still haven't received, still do not have an ETA for. And then for the bus stops improvements, I believe the number is actually going to be a little bit less than that, or at least the percentage is more, and there's less money remaining on that project. So I just have to input that into the CIP so it'll be reflected correctly.
Gary? You already on?
Yeah, I'm looking, it says fiscal year on both of them, 14, 15.
I think that's the year the PTMICA funds were originally, or the projects originated, and then over the years, as funding's been added, the projects have also evolved, because like the bus stop improvement ones has a very long list of actions taken that fall under that scope of work. So over the years, we've added numerous items or projects.
Did we, I'm looking at the 4 buses.
Mm-hmm.
We maybe allocated the funds in 14, 15 of $375,000. Costs have gone up, and we're only at 56%, and we've been waiting, it's going on 8 years for those buses?
The 2 buses we're waiting for were ordered technically, I think, well, not quite 2 years ago. I want to say it was in March of 21, April of 21, when we actually put in the order for the 2 buses. So I'd have to look at how that funding, it might, like I said, the fiscal year 14-15 would probably be when the project itself initiated. I don't know if all that funding initiated in 14-15.
So if you remember when Jamie was here, and that's when we approved the PTM-ISEA worksheet, we modified it multiple times, but we have had vehicle replacement on there since 2014. So
Yeah,
we've bought
I'm
numerous.
just looking at how it's presented here, these 4 buses since back then, and the amount, programmed amount was 375. Maybe.
We can
If
update
we're going
it.
to look at this, maybe have a footnote for some updates on it.
Yep.
When we go forward, so we can get a clear picture of where we're at. Do we have any idea when those buses are going to be delivered?
No, I have no ETA. I did talk to the representative from who we put in our order. And it sounds like there's something happening in the industry with force majeure, but I don't have more details on that right now, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other board questions? Tim?
I have a question, but it's not pertaining to the capital improvement. In reading through my packet, do I understand that AB 139 is going to sunset next year, and we're going to be back on a fare box ratio?
I don't think we know that at this time.
Okay.
But it can.
But I thought I read that they said that it
Depends
was...
on what the
Well,
government.
Oh, they can
what we
extend.
can't,
Yeah, it just depends on what's going to happen here.
well, what we can do, since we have to be careful, since this is an agenda item, can we maybe have that information updated back in February? That should that'll give us about a month and a half before we have enough, we have our next meeting, and maybe they'll come out with something? Okay, so can we, if the board is okay with that, for staff to add that on whether, regardless if there is an update or not from the state? Okay.
Sorry.
I'm seeing heads nod, so I think you were good, Melissa? Okay. Sorry, I need to stay on point with the agenda items.
Not a problem.
Okay, do you have any other questions for that agenda item? Okay. If the delay continues to happen, are we going to be getting a newer vehicle, or are we stuck with that year that we've ordered? Because by that time, the car is going to be like 4 years old.
Well, it's not built. So, I mean, the car doesn't exist, or the vehicle doesn't actually exist yet. They haven't built it. That's why we don't have an EPA. So
Okay.
the style of vehicle, which is really desirable, it's an all-wheel drive, somewhat newer model. We want it, but they aren't making a ton of them, as from what I understand. So it's not sitting there for 4 years. It doesn't exist yet, technically.
Okay. Is the technology going to be up to date? I guess so, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, they're standard gasoline vehicles, so they're not EV or anything.
okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board? None? Okay. I do need to open it up to, just a report. Do we need to accept it? It didn't say an action item, unless I missed it. Or just report out, okay. Just making sure. Okay, is there any public comment? Seeing none in the room, none online. We'll move on to item number 7, staff report. Are there any staff reports?
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I have nothing to add. I just wanted to let the council know I didn't have a follow-up report on the transit facility that we've been inquiring about, and I hope to bring that item back in February.
Okay.
I take it
Thank you.
back.
Yes. Yeah,
Just
go ahead.
On that, I did see Mike Walker, who's on the board, and talked to him about it, and we do have, yeah.
I know, I was excited about that, but I just haven't got like the appraisal report. So
Yeah.
she's been super busy, so that's the only thing holding me up.
He says right to the property, there is, and it goes all the way up to where the gun club is up there, the gun ammo place,
Great.
Rusty's is
Okay.
up there, yeah.
Cool.
And,
Mine's just the unimportant happy holidays to everybody, because we won't see you until next year.
oh yes, thank you for that reminder. Are there any other staff reports?
I got questions for the staff.
Yes, Justin, go ahead.
So, in our audit, we talked about a generator that we purchased for $30-something, $40,000. That generator, is that going to come with us when we go to the next facility? Or did we hook that person up with the...
No, we will be bringing the generator with us. All of the improvements that we've paid for, like the electric gate, the security cameras, any of those things that we've purchased, we'll be taking with us.
Okay.
Including the buses?
Yes. I forgot that little small.
You didn't say that.
And our tools and our vehicle lifts, everything that's in the shop.
I would assume those would come, but, when you plug in a generator or something, that's a big piece of machinery, and it's hardwired into the building, I'm sure. I'm just kind of curious. That was a pretty big improvement we made.
Yes.
If we get compensated, it comes, and I'm glad that, you answered that question.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no other question by board members, again, to echo Aaron, happy holidays, everyone. We'll see you next year. And Monica, it was great to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate it. And with that, we will join and see everyone in February.
Thank you, Monica.